Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right in and definitively crack the code on one of the absolute most fundamental mechanisms in all of economics. We're talking about how producers actually react to changing markets. You know, if you've ever wondered why there's suddenly a massive flood of a specific product on the store shelves, or on the flip side, why something just seems to disappear overnight, you are looking at supply in action. But here's the catch. There are two completely different ways supply changes, and mixing them up, well, it's pretty much the most common pitfall for students and analysts alike. So we're going to break this down conceptually so you never make that mistake.
Here's a quick look at our game plan for today. 1. The law of supply. 2. Movements, also known as a change in quantity. 3. Shifts, or a change in supply. And 4. We'll wrap it all up with a head-to-head recap.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the law of supply.
Okay, before we get into the really tricky stuff, we have to lock in our baseline reality. This law simply states that the quantity of a commodity offered for sale rises when its price rises and falls when its price falls. Pretty intuitive, right? But wait, the absolute most important part of this definition is actually that little phrase at the very end, ceteris paribus. It's Latin, and it basically means other things remaining the same. This foundational law relies on all other external factors, the cost of raw materials, the tech being used, government taxes, all of that being completely paused. We literally have to pretend the rest of the world is frozen in place so we can watch how a producer reacts to one thing, and one thing only, the price tag of their own product.
Moving right along to Section 2, movements, specifically a change in quantity.
To really visualize this frozen reality we just talked about, I want you to imagine this upward-sloping supply curve is bolted securely to the graph. I mean, it is not going anywhere. It acts as a single rigid track for any price reaction. Because we've locked all those outside factors constant, the producer's actual capability to make things hasn't changed at all. Only the price tag on the shelf is changing. Let's trace what happens when the market price climbs higher. Because the price goes up, the producer is suddenly super motivated by higher profit margins to produce more, right? So our tracker just moves upward along that exact same track, expanding the quantity supplied outward. We call this an expansion of supply. Notice that the curve itself didn't move a single inch. We literally just slid further up the track. And, as you'd expect, we see the exact opposite happen too. If the market price suddenly takes a nosedive, that profit incentive shrinks. The producer reacts by scaling back. So, the tracker point slides downward along that same rigid curve, causing the quantity they're willing to supply to contract. This downward slide, that is a contraction of supply.
So, here is the absolute crucial takeaway. Hammer this rule into your memory right now. A basic price reaction means you never ever leave the original line. Whether it's an expansion heading up or a contraction heading down, these are strictly what we call movements along the curve. The underlying capability of the business hasn't changed one bit. They're strictly just reacting to the price tag.
But hey, let's be real. The real world doesn't stay frozen forever, does it? It's time to unpause the world and completely flip the script. Ask yourself, what happens when the reality of the world around the producer fundamentally changes, but the market price of their actual product hasn't changed at all?
That brings us perfectly to Section 3, shifts, which we call a change in supply.
So what actually unbolts our curve from the floor? These external triggers. Imagine a factory gets a massive technology upgrade, allowing them to pump out goods twice as fast. Or think about what happens if the price of their raw materials, their input prices, suddenly plummets. Maybe the government throws them a production subsidy, or the price of a substitute good drops, making it way more attractive to focus on their primary product. These external factors are what dictate the shift. They fundamentally alter the structural reality of production, making it either cheaper or easier to produce the good, completely independent of the product's own market price.
Conceptually, here's how you need to look at this. The entire curve is no longer bolted down. Animate this in your head right now. The curve slides bodily to a completely new position, either sliding way out to the right or back to the left. We aren't moving a little tracker along a track anymore. We are picking up the entire track and relocating the whole shebang.
Let's say a great new piece of technology reduces the overall cost of production. The entire supply curve bodily slides to the right. Now notice how the market price stays perfectly flat. But because the producer is now so much more efficient, their quantity supply jumps way outward, despite the price remaining identical. This isn't just a reaction, it's a total structural upgrade for the business.
On the flip side, what if disaster strikes? If the government heavily raises taxes, or the cost of raw inputs just spikes out of nowhere, the business is fundamentally weakened. the entire capability decreases, physically sliding that curve bodily over to the left.
If we trace the exact impact of this leftward shift, you'll see that at the exact same market price, the producers simply cannot afford to make as much as they used to. This negative structural reality causes the available quantity in the market to shrink drastically. Or, if you look at it from another angle, to produce that original amount they used to make, they would now require a much higher market price just to cover their new, bloated costs. The entire capability of the market has essentially been downgraded.
Okay, bringing it home with Section 4, a quick recap of movement versus shift.
To absolutely ensure we never ever confuse a temporary price reaction with a structural capability shift, let's put them head-to-head one last time. On one side, we have a change in quantity supplied. That's a movement. It is triggered strictly by a change in the product's own price. The tracker point just slides up into an expansion or down into a contraction. The curve itself stays put. But on the other side, we have a change in supply. That's a shift. This is triggered by external factors, technology, taxes, input costs. The product's own price stays completely flat, but the entire curve bodily moves right for an increase or left for a decrease. Just remember the analogy. Movement is just sliding your train along the track because the price motivated you to, while a shift means the entire track has been physically ripped up and relocated by outside forces.
Internalizing this difference is honestly the absolute key to mastering market dynamics. So the next time you see a product's availability drastically change in the real world, you now have the tools to ask the right question. Are we just sliding along a rigid track because the price changed? Or has the fundamental structural reality of the market bodily shifted? Keep that question in the back of your mind and you will be analyzing the economy like a true expert. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next one.